welcome to my channel. I'll be showing you how to cut this bralette. In this tutorial, I'll be making use of a half scale dress form. That is why the bodies appear smaller. Alright, so I'm going to be removing the underbust. From the underbust to the waist, I'm marking it off. The underbust is about 13 inches. So I'm going to cut it out. Alright, so from the center front, from this center front line, I'm going to be drawing a line to a point 1 inch more than the bust arc. Remember the bust arc is actually gotten by the bust span, so 1 inch more than the bust span along the shoulder dart. All right, so I would measure from the bust point to where that line stopped, and I'll remeasure it on the second part of the shoulder dart, and I'll just mark it there. I'll come back to that later. So along the underbust region, I'll contour the underbust area to make it cinch to the waist. So I'll be taking out 1/2 inch from both sides of the dart and from the second side. Then I'll go ahead and redraw the style line connecting the bust point to the underbust like so, and I'll do the same for the second part. So next, I'm going to measure the underbust from the center front. I'll measure, and when I get to the dart, I'll shift my tape and continue measuring until, okay, it slipped there. I'll continue measuring until I mark the underbust like so. So now I'll go ahead and connect that point to the shoulder dart that I had marked earlier. Most people may leave it like this and cut out to sew, but for you to avoid gapping on the neckline and on this side line, I usually contour it. So I'm going to show you how I do it. You draw a line. I'll use my pencil to draw a line across the bust point. Then I'll mark 3/8 on both sides of that line and connect it to my bust point from the center front. I would thereby form a dart. Then on the other side, I would mark 1/4 inch from the line and I'll form a second dart. So I'm going to close this dart. I'll cut through to the bust point in order to close it. But you can see that it's looking kind of difficult for me to fold it. So I'm going to open up from the underbust carefully in order not to cut it out completely, and I'll tape it down. So I'll do the same for the center front carefully so it doesn't cut off completely, and I'll close the dart as well and tape it down. So you can see that the line is kind of bent, so I have to redraw the line to blend it well, and I'll do the same for the second part. So now I can go ahead and cut it out. Remember, there is no seam allowance, so this is the sloper. I'll be placing it on another sheet and add my seam allowance before cutting it on the fabric. Okay, you can see it now. All right. So now I have already cut it out on another sheet of paper, adding my allowance. So I'm doing my final cut on the fabric. This is the side bust. Then I'll notch the bust point like so. I'll take out the center, that's the center front area, and I'll cut it out as well. I'll equally notch the bust point. I'll be going around the waist. I would measure the under bust. Remember, it's the under bust I used. Then I added additional 4 inches because I want to add elastic. So I added 4 inches more than the under bust, and I'll measure 3 inches across for the length of the band, and I would rule a line. So I'll simply cut it out. Remember, it's your under bust, and you can add at least 4 inches or 5 inches since I'm adding elastic. Except you don't want to use elastic, then you can cut it and just add your seam allowance. So we're going to, you can see it when it's folded, it would give me this. Next thing I'm going to do is to cut the strap that will be holding the bralette in place. You can cut your strap at least 18 inches. Since this is a half dress form, I'm using 10 inches. Placed on fold, that is 5 inches. But for an adult, for an average adult, you can use 18 inches or 16 depending on your choice. There's no hard and fast rule. So I'll be making it 1 inch in width, and I'll simply cut it out. So now we can take it to the sewing table. I've already gummed interface on the bralette to make it firmer. So I'll be using 1/2 inch. You can use your pin to hold it down if it's difficult for you to sew like this. So I'll be using 1/2 inch as my seam allowance. You can see it's already popping. Always start from beneath when sewing like this, a princess style line or bustier. I usually start from beneath, not from above. Okay, so having done that, now I'm going to sew the lining. Remember that I cut extra fabric to line it, and it's not interfaced. There is no need for me to add interface for the lining. because of the curve, and edge stitch on the lining. I'm edge stitching on the lining area to ensure that the finishing comes out very well. You edge stitch as close as possible, as close as possible until you can't move any further. And then I'll do the second part, a stitching on the lining, not on the main fabric, please, on the lining. So I'll turn it to the front. You can see that it's already taken. I'll equally edge stitch on the lining. Okay, so I've pressed it already, and I want to join the band to it, and I cut elastic. The elastic you cut is the exact size of the under bust, since I told you I want to put elastic, and I attach pin to it. So on this other side, you fold it at the back, and then you just bend the allowance that you want to use, 1/4 inch, and place the elastic and carefully stitch it with a 1/4 inch, like so. So you fold it in now. I'll get back to the elastic later. All right, so from the place we notched before, so I'm going to place our bralette exactly on that point, on the midpoint. The bralette is going to be placed at the back of the band. You can see it at the back, so that you can see it now. I'm placing it at the back. Then I'll pin it in place. You make sure they are close to each other so it doesn't shift. We'll pin it in place. Just take your time, there's no rush. So I'll stitch it 1/4 inch. I really appreciate if you can like my channel, if you can hit the notification bell. I really appreciate it, to encourage us to keep doing more. Thank you so much for subscribing. All right, so now that I've done that, we are going to fold it carefully on top of the previous stitch, covering it up, and I would pin it down in place like so. I'll pin it down in place. So at this point here, you see the way I'm dragging it, it can be kind of tricky, but you just drag the elastic, you pull it. You can make use of an awl to help you out for the stitch to make it not to be so difficult in sewing. Just drag it straight like this and do it carefully. All right. So you can see our bralette is ready. You can add your claps and you're good to go. So now here guys, look at the finished work. You can see it on the dress form. It's so beautiful. You can see that the neck is not gapping, the side is not gapping, everything stays in place as it ought to be. So thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, I'm in the comment section. Please do well to subscribe and like. Thank you so much. See you in the next tutorial. Bye.